So here's a video about one of my favorite books. I've got two different copies. And this book is called Ressentiment by Max Scheler. So Ressentiment is French for resentment, but it's also used in a very particular way because it's part of the philosophical tradition stemming from Nietzsche. So Nietzsche has this famous book called On the Genealogy of Morals. And in that book, he starts to show how psychology and philosophy can start to blend together. And sometimes our beliefs aren't just uh, neutral observations of truth, but they can also be tools that we use for leverage, for social status, or for uh, moral standing over others in society. It's kind of like that old story from Aesop where the fox tries to reach the grapes and then when he can't, he says, oh, they were sour anyway. And so in that way, sometimes people make judgments about others or even come up with whole moral systems or philosophies which serve not necessarily to just objectively search for truth, but to position them as superior to others. And so Nietzsche uses this psychology to make a critique of Christianity in his book, saying that this religion stems from ressentiment or resentment of the weak against the strong. That the weak, because they cannot overcome the strong, they instead say that the strong are evil and that their weakness and humility is good. Blessed are the humble, for they shall inherit the earth. So Nietzsche takes that angle, which is very unique, and then this book, Ressentiment, is a response to that. And so Max Scheler was a Catholic, and he does take pains to defend the Christian religion against Nietzsche's attacks, but nonetheless, he does validate that this can happen sometimes, that people start to use their beliefs more for ulterior motives and social positioning and status and envy and resentment. This can certainly happen, even if that doesn't mean that it explains entire religions. But even more so than that, Max Scheler really gets a lot more rigorous in explaining the whole psychology of resentment or ressentiment. And he does it through the lens of what's called phenomenological psychology. So phenomenology is a kind of study that's a little different from science. In science, they consider that the scientist is engaged in certain methods and disciplines that make them completely objective and able to find objective knowledge which is not touched by any subjectivity of the scientist himself. But phenomenology rejects that kind of distinction between the person and their experience and tries to understand uh, both the human experience as it is in the first person, but then also what makes that experience possible. And so you take that kind of perspective on resentment, and what you have is what is this experience actually like in the first person? What is it? What's a meaningful way to understand it as people? But then also, what goes into that? What are the social and psychological factors that are essential parts of this experience? So that's kind of a background on the book, Ressentiment. Um, the term is also important in a different way, in that if you break it down, it actually has the word sentiment. So sentiment, and so sentiment means feeling, and re means again, and so it's a feeling that you have again. And originally in French, it could actually mean any feeling that sticks with the mind and is kind of circulated and percolated within. And so it could also include gratitude and resentment, right? It could be positive or negative, but the mind holding on to that and dwelling on it, that originally meant resentment, but then over time it mostly just took on the negative connotation, and that's a bit of the etymological um, source of our word resentment. But boy, reading this book was really such an experience. That it's really rare, but it does happen sometimes that you read a book and you feel like you didn't understand everything, but you got so much value anyway that as soon as you finish it, you go back to the start and you read it again. And so that's actually what happened. I originally got this one and I marked it up like crazy, and then I felt like there's so much value that I missed in it, and I also like my marks were more like trying to parse and work out what the heck is going on here. I wanted to get another one. This is the better edition for sure. There's some typographical errors in this one, so I went back to read it again. But I'll tell you, the first time I read this, the first sentence really made me laugh. I don't think it's intentionally meant to be funny. But I picked it up, and the first sentence, it said, "It is one thing to sift the data of inner observation conceptually and set them up as compounds, then to decompose them into ultimate simple elements and to study through artificial variation and observation and experiment the conditions and results of such combinations." And I read that, I was like, okay, if that's one thing, what's another? Like, what a contrast. Like, really? You're gonna put all that in one sentence, Max Scheler? Come on. So I laughed and I was like, oh my God, like, is is the book gonna be that dense? And thankfully, it's not that dense. Nietzsche on genealogy of morals is very dense. He even warns you in the beginning, my books are going to be painful to read, but that's to get you to really think about them. And I have to confess, I've developed a bit of a taste for dense books simply because there's so much value to extract, and sometimes the difficulty is part of the value, and that it makes you work for the ideas, almost like a exercise for the mind, and they just tend to imprint themselves that much deeper on your psyche and to feel like something you've earned. We're so quick to just get AI summaries and just passively consume information and think that we've assimilated it somehow, and so it's very much against the modern taste to read a dense, difficult book, but I have to recommend it. It's a really wonderful experience. So I read that first sentence and that made me laugh. And then I just kind of skimmed through his prefatory remarks and got to the rest of it. And I was like, wow, this is really an excellent way to break down exactly what resentment is. And I was so impressed with it. And so he doesn't define it, but he characterizes the phenomenon. He says, Ressentiment is a self-poisoning of the mind which has quite definite causes and consequences. It is a lasting mental attitude caused by the systematic repression of certain emotions and affects, which as such are normal components of human nature. Their repression leads to the constant tendency to indulge in certain kinds of value delusions and corresponding value judgments. The emotions and affects primarily concerned are revenge, hatred, malice, envy, the impulse to detract, and spite. And so basically what he's saying is that resentment is when you have these feelings, like you want revenge, you hate someone, you wish bad things upon them, you envy them, you want to pull them down, make them not so great, and do things out of spite just to hurt them, even if it's of no benefit to you. But then, rather than expressing those feelings are suppressed. And what happens is there's this inner tension between something that feels morally unresolved in the world, which keeps that wound alive, which keeps that re-feeling of resentment. And then the mind compensates for the lack of resolution or action or adequate expression of these feelings through value delusions. And so he's using a technical term, but it actually goes back to that whole idea of Aesop with the parable of the fox and the grapes. The fox wanted the grapes. He was trying to reach them because he wanted to eat them, so he saw value in them. But then when he couldn't reach them, he said, oh, they were sour anyway. And so that devaluation is compensating for his inability to reach them. And that makes him feel better. It makes him feel like less of a failure. And so similarly, when we feel wronged by someone, but we're not able to change the situation or express how we feel or do something, or it's just like beyond our control, sometimes we compensate with interpretations. We interpret ourselves and the person and the situation in a way that makes us feel morally superior. And that's a kind of way we compensate with that feeling of humiliation, vulnerability, helplessness, all these things which are very hard to tolerate for anyone in this world who has a position they wish to maintain, a reputation they wish to maintain, who expects to be treated a certain way, who has an honor code, etc., etc. And so that's how he defines ressentiment, and then he goes into a great explanation of the different causes of resentment. He gives different examples of people in society who are likely to feel resentment. He talks about the different types of suppression, and later in the book, how this can lead to different versions of philosophies and theologies. He talks about genuine values in comparison to values based or tinged by resentment. And I don't want to summarize the whole book. It's really such an excellent book. I really love this book, and it's made me understand the whole phenomenon of resentment so much more deeply, to think of the mind as a system of different faculties which are all involved in playing a certain role in maintaining resentment. And that has really been groundbreaking for me, both in understanding how the mind works and being able to better help others by having insights of how what they're experiencing is made possible by the structuring of the mind through resentment. That's a whole topic, but I wouldn't have been able to figure that out without reading this book. I love this book. It's so good. I think I'll keep this for the rest of my life and think about it and come back to it over time. And even if you're not into psychology, our society is just so permeated with resentment and value judgments based on resentment. After you read this book, you're going to see the patterns that he talks about everywhere. Everywhere. You would just be like, oh my God, ressentiment, ressentiment, ressentiment. We're just like drowning in ressentiment these days with the internet and with the constant tension about the future of Western civilization and values and what is true fairness. there's like these like fundamental divides in our society, and people tend to organize around opposition, justification by opposition. They're bad, therefore we're good. So you'll just see it everywhere. It is so enlightening for understanding the social world that we live in today, where people can just vent their grievances with the touch of a few fingers on a keyboard, put it out on the internet for thousands of people to see and like and share and spread the poison of ressentiment. So, yeah, highly recommend this book. Check it out. And, yeah, take care.